So I want to set this up first. This is a very textual teaching. It's going to be on one chapter of the Psalms. But let me set it up first. We have this period between Shavuot and Yom Teruah where you kind of are left with a question of like, where should you focus at during this time? At least for me, until you get up to like the month of Elul, which is sort of a heart-searching time period where you're getting ready for those high holidays. And so it leaves me wondering like what kind of themes or which passages of scripture might be good to look at during this time. And I think because the Feast of Yah are tied to an agrarian type culture, right? Agrarian means they're agriculturally based, right? They're kind of based on spring harvest and fall harvest, and you have the one in the middle that kind of goes along with the wheat harvest. And so let's just take a moment and imagine back to a society like this, right? Spring is a very busy time. You're planting barley and all your other things, and you're getting it ready. All the lambs and the cows are having babies. There's a lot of busyness in that time. Okay, and then fall, you kind of then Passover starts, and then you're not quite as busy after that through Shavuot till you have the wheat harvest. But then from that time after the wheat harvest until you start doing the fall harvest, it's a good time to repair, to maintain, and to build up your infrastructure. And so there's a few things going on in the summer. We're harvesting our tomatoes. We're pulling some weeds occasionally and, going through our garden, making sure everything's good. But I was looking at what I was doing, and I have replaced a well pump. I've replaced the pump that we water our garden with. We've started a compost pile, all these different things. We've worked on our road. We filled in holes that beavers and otters created in our pond. A lot of work because typically this year's non-typical, but it doesn't rain as much, and so you're able to get out there and do stuff without the impediment of rain. And you can also work on your house. You can work on your barns, your tractors, tillers, all these things. It's a good time to do maintenance. All right. So, with that said, my purpose today is to help you build up your scriptural infrastructure, or your spiritual infrastructure. And I think a good point of reference to work on this is Psalm 91. So, what is the spiritual equivalent to mending, maintaining, strengthening a physical infrastructure? It's sort of a question. I didn't phrase it very much like a question, but what is that? What is the spiritual equivalent of that? And I think it is meditating. All right. I think Psalm 1 gives us a really good clue about this. It tells us about a man who's like a tree that's being nourished continually by this streams of water, and his leaves not withering, and everything he does is prospering. All right. And it tells us that the reason for this is because this man who's very blessed is meditating on Yah's Torah day and night. Okay. And so Psalm 91 obviously isn't in the Torah. There is the Torah, and then and it's scripture, and then the rest of the books are commenting on and explaining the Torah. And so when Psalm 1 mentions this as it's written, it's referencing the Torah, but also it becomes applicable to its own self, right? What it says about meditating on it becomes applicable also to Psalm 1. And I think all of scriptures, there's that meat down in there that as you meditate on it, not just the Torah, but the rest of it, you can pull that out and strengthen yourself by it. All right. So, and we need this. We need this to help change our attitudes, our perspectives, and especially through difficult times like Andre was teaching on last week about what trials are and how to approach trials and think about trials and what they do for us. They're actually a lot of times blessings in disguise. So I think that Psalm 91 will help us build up that spiritual infrastructure to weather these storms. It's doing that thing again, Tim, where everything's just like minimizing on my. Okay. So there's this old song. Perhaps it's a hymn. I don't know. I could not remember it, but I remember the words of it that say, "It's no secret what my God can do. What He's done for others, He'll do for you." And I think this is a good backdrop to have while reading Psalm 91. And it's a actually this is a convenient summary for verse 2 of Psalm 91, which that chapter I believe hinges on. So let's just read through Psalm 91 and appreciate the beauty of it in its totality before we kind of dig in and begin to meditate on it. So it says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked, because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge. And no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague shall come near your tent, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent. You will trample underfoot. Because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. And when he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation." It's such a beautiful psalm. So very well written by the person that composed it. And let's talk about that for a second, about who this author or authors may have potentially been. All right. And I think a lot of times that we kind of assume that uh, Psalms that don't give a specific author were written by David. And that actually lines up with the potentiality that the Christians believe of the author here. They think it was either David or Moses. And the Jewish scholars, without a doubt, most certainly believe it is Moses, and you see this in all of their writings. And actually, it was here one time we were discussing the Torah portion in the morning here, and I said, I wonder if this is Moses, and Scott was like, "Well, I have a footnote right here in my Bible that says it was likely Moses." And and actually, I agree with the Jewish perspective on the author with this. And there's several good clues, but one good but circumstantial piece of evidence for this theory is that the compiler of Psalms, there's debate about that as well. I think that it's potentially Ezra. Okay. And he puts this directly next to the one psalm that Moses claims in the title, right? If you go back to Psalm 90, you read the top of it, a psalm of Moses, okay? And so this one's directly next to it, and I just think it would be convenient that this person may have done this, okay? We often don't give the Psalms the holistic approach that it deserves, but each chapter was not written or at least compiled in a vacuum. It had an overall theme and message behind it that dictated the way that it was structured. And I don't know if you know this, but there's 5 sections of the Psalms. It was kind of created to mirror the way that the Torah is laid out with the 5 books, and the Psalms is kind of that same structure. And first, section 1 is 1 through 41. It ends with the doxology. Then section 2 is 42 through 72. It ends with the doxology. 73 through 89 ends with the doxology. 90 to 106, the fourth book, ends with the doxology. And 107 to 150, and then a final doxology. And these doxologies are most of them are very similar. And most of the sections end with a version of the refrain which is common throughout the scriptures. Give praise to the Lord, for he is good, for his love endures forever. And so my point is that the Psalms are a very highly orchestrated book that we need to give that recognition to. Okay, and not a hodgepodge of random thoughts by random authors. All right. So let's talk. We talked about the author. Let's talk about a little bit of the potential context of Psalm 91. So, and it's a little funny when you read the midrash in this chapter, the rabbinic midrash on it. This group is no stranger to midrash. We kind of had one this morning over the Torah portion. But there's various opinions about what was happening with Moses whenever he wrote this psalm, where he was at, what he was doing, the circumstances around it. And some say that he was dedicating the tabernacle. Others say that he wrote this when he was on top of Mount Sinai. Others insinuate that it was neither place, but it was a reflection back to those events. All right, and I think verse 2 is that personal reflective bit. So I kind of lean in that direction that this was not either dedicating the tabernacle or on top of Mount Sinai, but a reflection back at everything that God had done. And verse 2 is meant to provide a lot of weight to the rest of it on the promises that you see there. All right. It's also very interesting how it switches between the persons in this. So if you think about verse 1, it's written in the third person. And just as a reminder, we have this thing up here talking about how persons work. First verse is in third person. And he's making a statement about this ideal dwelling state. All right, the next verse is in first person, claiming that the writer has potentially experienced this state, while the rest of the chapter is an encouragement to someone in the second person that they can dwell in this state as well. All right, now just for context, and we'll come back to it. If the writer is Moses, as the rabbis say, let's think about what he is saying, or perhaps who he is saying it to. All right, because as we see here with this large section being written in the second person, he is writing it to someone. All right, so to do that, let's look at a part of this section that's definitely being written to someone. All right, and it says, it's verses 4 through 7. It says, he will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. And so I think one thing that this may tell us is that it was written to someone that is very exposed. They don't have a lot of physical protection around them, all right, in such a way that they are having to rely on Almighty God for the protection that they receive. And they're being assured here that this protection is going to be granted. All right, so it's someone in clear need of a refuge. All right, where there is no physical refuge present. All right, and the author is advising this person that Yah is going to protect them from all these various things, terrors at night, wars, battles, trippings, lions, snakes, all these different things. So thinking that it might be David, to just consider that, where would David, what is the context from the stories that we know of David where this might have been him mentoring someone? And it just does not readily pop out to me how this being written to someone can really apply to David, because by the time he was mentoring someone, perhaps his own children, Solomon, whatever, he would have grown up in a palace, with lots of guards, lots of protection. So I believe it has this tone of a very old, wise mentor developing a new leader to seek Yah as their refuge and to look to him for strength in hard times through the trials. And so, like I said, it doesn't seem to fit a good scenario for David for me. With what we know about Moses, would that seem to make sense? It kind of would, I think. All right. And so, who would Moses be potentially giving all of this encouragement to? And I think there's one very logical answer to this, and we will find it in Deuteronomy 3, 21, well, starting at 21 there. And this is Moses talking in verse 21, and I've kind of taken out a few of these middle verses. And I commanded Joshua at that time, your eyes have seen all that the Lord your God has done to these two kings. So will the Lord do to all the kingdoms into which you are crossing. You shall not fear them, for it is the Lord your God who fights for you. 5 verses later, Yah speaking to Moses, go up to the top of Pisgah and lift your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward, and look at it with your eyes, for you shall not go over this Jordan, but charge Joshua and encourage and strengthen him, for he shall go over at the head of this people, and he shall put them in possession of the land that you see. Right? So I think Joshua is a very good, plausible recipient of this encouragement that we see in 91, which the Jews and I also believe that it was likely Moses that wrote it. And clearly Moses was already his mentor, but now it's very official. Hey, it's your job to get Joshua ready, because you're passing him the baton and he is going to take Israel into the land that was promised. All right, and so what do we find later? Not only was Moses his mentor, but when Moses is out of the picture, Yah begins mentoring and encouraging Joshua straight, without Moses as the intermediary, right? And you see this all throughout Joshua chapter 1, which we're going to look at in a second. All right. And I was speaking with chiasms last week, or speaking to Shuri last week about chiasms, and there's a pretty nice little chiasm here. And if you're not familiar, chiasm is where you have a mirror of thoughts, where it's like A B C B A, right? And chi is this Greek letter that looks like a K, and it has a like a triangle that points to a line. Okay, and so that's kind of pointing at a central theme or central idea, usually something like very important in the text. And so we see here in Joshua 1:7, all right, only be strong and courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. All right, and here's just a comparison back to Psalm 1, where we can see that is very clear that he's making the same case that the psalmist in Psalm 1 is making. All right, that blessed man that's like a strong tree by the rivers of water is because he meditates on God's Torah day and night. All right, but be strong and courageous is not a universal command, right? Right? If you're outside of the law, outside of God's will, um, and you are claiming to be a believer, you're taking God's name in vain by committing blatant and obvious sin. And the command says that he will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. So in that case, be strong and courageous. All right. In those circumstances, no, I don't think so. It's like that's where the fear of the Lord comes in. Okay. Be very afraid that your sin will find you out. But inside of the plan of God, you should be strong and very courageous. Outside of it, not so much. So the effectual point of the chiasm is that the strength and courage are the fruit of knowing that you're abiding in God's plan, right? And abiding in God's plan is an effect that comes from the three things mentioned back in verse 8. It shall not depart from your mouth. You shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do all that is written in it. All right, so let's look back at the first verse of Psalm 91 and start digging our way through this. All right, so we'll read the bottom line all together. Yoshev Beseter Elyon Betzel Shaddai Yitlanan. Okay, all right, if you've looked at, studying Hebrew a little bit, you may know this very first word, Yoshev. Anybody know it right off the top of their head? Yeah, to dwell or sit, to sit or dwell. Yes. So more modern Hebrew, it means to sit, but in biblical Hebrew, it is this word for dwell, which has a little bit more of a added connotation that you're comfortable enough to where you can put down your backpack and your staff, and you can sort of relax. Did you have something to
Settle down.
settle down? Yep. Yeah, you can settle down. Your heart can take a resting heart rate, and you can just sort of be at peace. All right. Okay, and this word beseter here is this is a word meaning covertness. All right, and it's an untouchable state essentially, and the psalmist here is telling us that with Elyon, with the Most High God, you are in an untouchable state. All right, it's a place that evil cannot find you. It can't go there. All right, and then there's a second group of three words here. Right here, Betzel Shaddai Yitlunan. All right, in the shadow, because it has the Betzel. Zel is shadow, and in is implied with the bet there. It's not implied; it's actually obvious. In the shadow, okay, of Shaddai. And then Yitlunan is kind of back to the Yoshev, which is abiding. Yitlunan is abiding. It's pretty cool. I think this tells us something about this desired state that we're told of here. That it starts with sitting, dwelling, and it ends with abiding. Okay? And just like Yoshev has this special connotation to unburden, Yitlunan has a connotation of sleeping in peace. All right, and if you apply the rule of first mention to this term Yitlunan, you find its first use is whenever Lot, it happens in Genesis, where the angels come to Lot to take him and his family away, and he offers them protection in his house, and he uses the term that he will provide Yitlunan to these two angels. All right, and it's in Genesis 19:2. He said, "And behold, now my lords, turn in, I pray you, into my servant's house and tarry." That's the Yitlunan, tarry, all night. All right, it's Strong's 3885. And it has this very strong connotation of security being provided. All right. So if you continue in Genesis 19, he says, then rest and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early and go on your way. And they said, nay, but we will abide in the street all night. We will yitlunan in the street all night. All right. And in a way, the response to Lot was, we have peace and safety wherever we go. We can sleep anywhere. We are under Yah's protection. Nothing can hurt us. All right. But Lot didn't really know. I don't think he exactly knew what they were capable of at this time. All right. These angels are carrying the power of God with them. And it doesn't matter where they're at. All right. And this applies beyond angels, I think. If you're on a mission from God, much like we see in the prophecies of the 144,000, invincible. They're untouchable. Nothing can happen to them. And there's a few other interesting details in the story of Lot. The wicked people of the village, as we know, they come to Lot's house and they demand that he delivers them out these two men that are visiting with him. Okay. And in Genesis 19:8, Lot goes out and he even offers his own daughters to satiate their perverseness. And Lot says, only unto these men do nothing, for therefore they came under the shadow of my roof. See, Lot's in a predicament here. All right. And we judge Lot harshly for offering his daughters, as I think we should, but he got himself into a predicament by making an oath of protection to these men that he couldn't exactly keep. He knew they were going to be overwhelmed unless they had some sort of supernatural, influence on the situation. But he's trying his very best to keep this oath of protection. He tried to guarantee the Betzel Yitlunan, but it turns out God is the only one that can provide that level of it. All right. And the Psalm 91 passage states, he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. And one of the neatest things is that Lot could not provide the covert place, the abiding, dwelling, resting, sleeping place. All right. But God provided it for him. All right. The covert place, the Beseter, by the angels blinding the evil ones that were trying to break down their door and drag them out. It actually, you could read it as if they weren't necessarily physically blinded in their eyes, but they were blind to where the door was, because it says whenever the angels did this to them that they wearied to find the door. They could know all of a sudden, where did the door go? That's one possible way that you can look at that. And it's because God has put them in this covert place. He made it a beseter, a secret place. All right. So we've kind of started out in the chapter, but we will eventually go through this chapter, but I want to take a little bit of a different look at this. And I think that you will find it interesting. I hope so. To do that, let's look at it like this. Let's go ahead and read the chapter again. He who dwells in the in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler, from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions. Under his wings you will find shelter. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked, because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge. And no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague shall come near your tent, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion, the serpent, you will trample underfoot, because he holds fast to me in love. I will deliver him, I will protect him, because he knows my name. And when he calls on me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. All right. And I think we got this part covered with the breakdown of the persons. All right. But let's look at each section here. Okay. What are they telling us? All right. So verse 1 is stating this. I call it a promise of Yah. Verse 2, a testimony of that promise. 3 through 13 are details of that promise, and 14 through 16 are words of Yah accompanying that promise. All right, I want to look at a pattern that I see in this. And I'm going to draw this out in a little bit of a different way. I call it the 5 keys of Psalm 91. And I'm using a different version here. Because it was easier for me to copy and paste. Okay, but I think you will see this pattern in the Hebrew. All right, do you see it? You see it over here? Key, 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 key. All right, this is the Hebrew word key, and on any text that this has been written on by Jews, the line will start exactly like this, with the key at the beginning. All right. And so the first one is key. He will save you from the fowler's trap, from the destructive plague. Key 2, which is in verse 9, is key. Because you took the Lord, my refuge, the Most High is your haven. 11 is key. For he will order his angels to guard you wherever you go. And the final key, is in verse 14. Because he is devoted to me, key, I will deliver him, I will keep him safe, for he knows my name. Now, what I want to show you with these 4 verses, and there actually is 5 keys here. Let me show you. If you look right here, this is the 5th key, and it's hidden inside the 4th line here. And it's He Yodah Shemi, because he knows my name. And I can actually, there we go, the 5 keys. And in this verse, in this version, the translation of these 5 keys are: 1, the first key is that. The second one is because. The third one is for. The fourth one is because, and then the 5th one is for. All right, and so the purpose of each key sets up a relationship between 2 different things. All right. Sometimes it's different types of relationships. Sometimes it is an equivalency, sometimes it's dependency, and sometimes it's a contingency. That means because of this, then this. And you can think of it in like programming language, like an if-then kind of statement. Like, if the computer receives this, then it puts out this. All right. I think there is a really good example to kind of show you how key can work through a verse that you all know. It's the one that we mentioned, that is the doxology through all the sections of Psalms. And it's one of Tim's favorite songs that he mentioned the other day, or at least one of them. And that song is... All right, that song is Hodu Adonai Ki Tov Ki Le'olam Chazdo. All right. And in this case, I think it is setting up an equivalency, right? Because it's telling you to thank God. Why? God is good. God equals good. All right. Why is he good? Because he has everlasting love, unlimited love. All right, and so it's an equation. God equals good equals unending love. All right, it's a very, very powerful statement. Um, so if they're in a sequence like this, you can see this very clearly. There's an equivalency being set up here, right? Um, and so anytime I see a key in the Hebrew text, I'm looking to figure out what kind of relationship it's trying to establish. All right. So we have our very first key in Psalm 91, verse 3. It is the word, I'm using all sorts of different translations. So I like doing that. I really like a variety of translations some of them I won't touch, obviously. Um, but we can, apply this test by looking at verses 2 and 3. And in this version, it's translated as surely. Um, and some versions do not separate these statements, right? It, there is no capitalization of that first word in verse 3. It will say that, and it will be a continuation of that same sentence. Okay. So it would be like, I will trust in him that he will deliver you, right? Which is, literally stating, because he did it for me, I know he will do it for you. All right. All right. And you can boil it all the way down and understand. Actually, I just said that. All right. But it's more, okay? Because we have in this string of keys, we have a string of equivalencies, or some of them are dependencies. All right. So, yes, these are placed throughout the psalm, but because I think they're placed in a certain way, I do think that each key is tying back to the first one and also the statements on either side of the key, if that makes sense. All right. And I think our psalmist intended that way to make his personal testimony the whole reason for everything he's saying. And we actually see the psalmist re-mentioning verse 2. He's re-mentioning his personal testimony down in verse 9. Remember, he's doing verses 3 through, I think, 13, all in the second person. But he slips out of the second person to go back into the first person when he says, which is my refuge, which is that thing that he says back in verse 2. He's reminding the person he's writing to, God is my refuge. That's why this is real. That's why it happens. All right, so we were in verse 9, but I want to go back and look at just before that, verses 7 and 8. I know we're kind of not going very linear here. We're skipping around a bit, but there's these hyperlinks that are being created by these keys that kind of makes it more interesting to do it that way. All right. And so if we have that key at the beginning of verse 9, let's look back at 7 and 8 and see on this side of the key if it is a contingency, dependency, equivalency. All right, so 7 says, 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou see, or shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. And then to throw 9 in there, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. I think these 3 verses are a very strong evidence that this was written to Joshua. I did some research using AI to look at how many would have had to die to ensure that the promise that generation would not enter into the land. And I wanted to compare that with normal death rates that you would have in a civilization somewhat resembling that time period. with an average age dispersion. There's a lot of things you got to think about. All right. And so for the 603,548 people that were cursed to not enter into the land, which is the number given us -2 because of Caleb and Joshua. Okay. You would normally have expected about 10 to 12,000 deaths per year. Okay. But to ensure that the curse was true, that they would not enter into the land, you would have need to have an average death rate of about 15,100 per year, which is, depending on what the normal death rate was, it's 25 to 50% higher, to make sure that the curse or the promise comes to pass. And so for Joshua, as we talked about today, with corpse uncleanliness, there would have been thousands falling at his side, and it says at his right hand. It doesn't say by his right hand. Okay. And so, 25 to 50% more deaths a year, that is a lot. It's going to be very, very noticeable. All right. And Joshua's he's here witnessing it all, right? And Moses says potentially to Joshua, even though you're going to see these people falling out left and right, front and back, the curse will not apply to you. All right, because you made Yah your habitation. All right. And when that moment happened for these 12 spies to give their report, you put your faith in Yah's promise and you stood up when it counted, and therefore you built your belief system on Yah's promise, and this is the result. So, and now let's look at verses 10 and 11, all right? And they really kind of just flow right along with that, all right? There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling, for he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. And this, strongly agrees, I think, with Moses, the hypothesis that this is Moses encouraging Joshua. And keep in mind that for Joshua, where he's 42 years old whenever he spied out the land, but he and Caleb had received the promise they would enter the land. And so this essentially makes him invincible for the next 38 years. All right. And the reason is because if God makes a promise, a covenant, and it does not come true, then he's a liar. God is not a liar. So Joshua has some especially guaranteed protection, as if the angels are watching his every step to ensure that Yah's promise will be proven true. All right. And verse 12 here says, and they shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. So Joshua cannot take any damage, right? Because Yah's not going to halfway deliver on a promise, right? If something this explicit is said, you're going to live for the next 38 years, then it becomes a testimony of his that he is especially interested in. To where it can't be called into question. Joshua can't trip over a stone, hit his head, and then everybody's wondering, okay, is he going to come out of this coma? All right. It has to be shown above reproach. And then 13, it just keeps going with this promised invincibility. All right, thou shalt tread upon the lion and the adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under thy feet. So verse 13 is, because there's a key at the beginning of 14, verse 13 is a potential part A to relationship in 14 where the key starts. All right. But I think we have to keep in mind that 14 changes from the second to the third person. And so whereas these are from the author to a person, those words are from God to a person. All right. And so instead of it being a relationship between 13 and 14, I think it is setting up a comparison or a contingency between everything that follows it. So everything from 14 through the end of 16. All right, and let's take a look at that. All right, so it says, because he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. So the contingency is having your love set on Yah and him delivering you. And, yes, of course, Yah cares for every person. He so loved the world, as John 3:16 says. All right. But there is, he's not just delivering based on the love. This love that is being set upon him is not a passive love. This word here is the Hebrew word being used is kashak, and it's first used to describe Shechem's love for Tamar. And if you remember this type of love, it is essentially an obsession. It is an obsession. It's like a deer that is panting for water, so the soul should long after him, as the psalmist says. All right, and the second part of 14 is very important. That's the final key there. I will set him on high because he has known my name. And the on high, here's a word that means inaccessibly high, out of reach from danger, because he hath known my name. And so, just want to, I guess, clear something up here. I disagree with people that make very strong arguments for a particular pronunciation of God's name that they want to champion. I disagree with these people. And while I do appreciate all the scholarship that goes into, these different lines of thinking about, knowing the name, if they too strongly protest that a particular pronunciation should be used, then I think they actually can cross a boundary into sin, more or less. They discredit sound teaching and other stuff by taking too strong of a stance on this. All right, because I do not think knowing the name is knowing a particular pronunciation. It is knowing God's character that he is trying to get through all of his scripture. Okay, so just wanted to throw that out there. I think this is about character. It is not about a pronunciation. All right. All right. So I think that these final statements in 15 and 16 are these additional contingencies upon the two keys shown here. And 15 says, he will call upon me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. And I really love that the last word of this chapter is Be Yeshuati. All right. He will be in my Yeshua. Right. So start to close this up, but really, hopefully I feel like your spiritual infrastructure has been strengthened a bit. You really have to get into this psalm and make it your own meditation, though. That's something I want to get across. You don't just take my word from it that these things are powerful and meditating is powerful. Put it into practice and give it a try. Very long, thoughtful meditation on these words and where they were used and how they were used. All right. I love thinking about the writer of this psalm, which I believe is most certainly Moses, and what his intent was and what it might still be. And I love considering that it may have been Joshua and how this encouragement to him can also be impactful in my own life. All right. I love looking at the word key. I think it's pretty key. I like seeing how it highlights the character of God throughout this psalm, and I love being able to present this to you today. And I hope we all have a blessed rest of our Sabbath. All right. I'll just end with this. I have those final three verses, the two keys highlighted, and the contingencies highlighted as well. It's the final words of Yah that are used in this psalm. And I really think it is a good hypothesis that this is Moses getting Joshua ready, sending him with these words, and charging him to complete the task of delivering Israel to the land. All right. With that said, mandatory question and comment time. All right. Mike's went up so fast, I got to go with him first.